For a long time, I've struggled to put my sexuality into words, and the times that I do, I feel like people just don't get me, at least 75% of the time. Now, I know that I'm a lesbian. That's not the issue here. What I'm talking about is finding my place in the asexual spectrum. So before we jumped into the video today, I wanted to give our monthly shout out to our YouTube tier subscribers on Patreon. So a special thank you goes out to Asha Yahoo, Vanessa, Riley, Zoe, Sammy, Joy, Jesse, Maddie, Maya Sparkles, Tara, Bia, Tori, and Ember. Thank you so much for your support. For those of you that haven't checked it out yet, go down to the description below and you can find a link to my Patreon page where you can support me and Tipsy in the work that we do, in addition to getting access to perks like a Discord server. And let's get back to the video. So do you ever think to yourself, people just don't get me? Like, to the point where sometimes you don't tell people certain things about yourself because you feel like it'll just be a waste of time or energy. That is how I feel most of the time when it comes to being on the asexual spectrum. But you might be wondering, Chloe, isn't that exactly what you're doing with this video here? Maybe, but I would say not exactly. I'm putting this out there just to see where it lands and who it resonates with. And I also think this video will reach many more people than I would in like a day-to-day conversation about this topic. So for that reason, it feels different and it feels much more worth the time and energy. I also really want to emphasize that this is my experience, this is my journey. What it means to me to be on the asexual spectrum may be very similar or very different from what it means to any of you out there that also identify this way. All that being said, it did take me a long time to start adopting labels like demisexual. You know, I've encountered the issue of not wanting sex even close to as much as any of my past partners. And this, you know, it was this whole, it's not you, it's me. But it really is me. It's not you. Especially when we're talking pre-transition, when my partners and the rest of the world saw me as a man, and therefore they expected me and couldn't understand why I wasn't horny all the time and why I didn't crave sex all the time like all the other guys. I couldn't put it into words either, probably because this felt like yet another thing to be ashamed about. I was already struggling with this whole like gender thing, and now my sexuality too. Let's just repress that and stuff that deep down and never acknowledge it, never let it see the light of day. And relationship after relationship, it's an issue, the relationship eventually comes to an end, and this may not be the key issue, but it is often an issue. You know, when I have partners who prioritize sex when I honestly find it boring or unnecessary most of the time, this can easily create a barrier, especially when I wasn't good at communicating about it because I didn't have the words or the confidence to talk about it. And I will say I am still very much learning how to put it into words. This is where I'm at now, so let's just have a go at it. This might evolve over time, and it probably will. But for starters, figuring out that whole gender thing, embracing that I'm a trans woman, that certainly made exploring other parts of myself much easier, kind of opened the door. I toyed around with the label demisexual, like I mentioned, which means someone who only develops sexual attraction and desire for someone after developing a strong emotional bond to them. And this is where it often gets difficult to explain it to people who don't find themselves on the asexual spectrum. I've had multiple people tell me things like, oh, me too, I also prefer to get to know people before I have sex with them. Or things like, I also don't have casual sex. I get what you're trying to say here, but that's typically quite different from being asexual or being on the spectrum of asexuality. Not engaging in casual sex is definitely part of it, but that's a vast oversimplification because it ignores a lot of other pieces to it. Kind of like the whys, as in, why do I not engage in casual sex? Let's talk about the difference between having sexual desires, fantasies, or attractions, and engaging in sexual actions. Many people may not engage in sexual activity until they've gone on at least a few dates with someone. That's, I think, pretty common. But most people will have sexual desire and or have sexual fantasies before this point. Another way to look at this is like primary versus secondary attraction. Primary attraction is like the immediate attraction you develop when you first see someone, when you first meet them, usually based on physical characteristics. And secondary attraction is more that attraction that develops after getting to know someone. We could think of this as like lust versus love, or physical attraction versus emotional attraction. I hardly experience this primary attraction as somebody who's on the A spectrum. Sure, I can see a woman and be like, she's very pretty, maybe I want to talk to her and get to know her. But like 99% of the time, I'm not going to also have like sexual fantasies, sexual desires, like a deeper sexual attraction until I actually get to know this person. Like, I'm not going to have this thought of like, she's hot, I want to sleep with her, like immediately. And there's nothing wrong with people who have those thoughts as long as you don't act on them in ways that are inappropriate and violate people's boundaries. But a lot of emotional connecting would need to happen, like I said, before having these thoughts, let alone engaging in these actions. Now, I could count on one hand probably the number of sexual thoughts, desires, fantasies, etc. that pop into my head on a given month. All right, we're done. There are many months where I can't recall even a single thought. Like the only time I fantasized about sex with someone, any time really in the past year or several years, is on several occasions, and it's only involved one person, somebody that I have a very strong emotional connection with and that I've known for a while. I would say maybe I masturbate 1 to 2 times a month on a frisky month. And that's usually just to get like a physical urge out of my system and move on with my fucking life. Maybe that's TMI, but we're sex positive here, so moving on again. I literally hardly ever think about sex, and when I'm with a partner, the vast majority of times I do think about it is because my partner may have literally just brought it up. Don't get me wrong, I enjoy the emotional intimacy aspect of having sex with a partner, but the physical actions, those often feel exhausting and become quite boring quite quickly. And that being said, I definitely like physical touch, but I'd much rather cuddle or make out or hold hands or even just spend time with a partner doing something that's non-sexual. So it's not that I won't have sex with a partner, it's just that it's hardly on my mind and it's quite often really not a priority. I'm quite indifferent about it, and when I do engage in sex, the goal is typically to make my partner happy, which in turn makes me happy, mostly because it's a way of emotionally and intimately connecting with them. But whether or not I get off, I really don't care. So many people may prefer to get to know the person better before being sexually intimate, as we've talked about. But like most things when it comes to sexuality, it's not a preference. And when I do date and connect with somebody on a deeper emotional level, there's still a very high chance that I still won't care or really think about sex very often, even with this person. That doesn't mean I'm not very emotionally attracted and connected to them. It just means that sex holds very little importance or priority in my life. But like I said, the times that I do try to talk about it, I typically feel shut down or unheard. That's what happened with that one therapist I mentioned in a previous video. I feel like when it comes to sexuality, asexuality specifically is one of those things that many people have lots of misconceptions about still. It doesn't help that the culture here in the US often pressures us into having sex or assumes that we're all having sex and then tells us if we don't want it or aren't having sex that something is wrong with us, especially for those of us that are assigned male at birth. It's yet another case of being different, being seen as abnormal. But I've experienced being seen as abnormal or being very misunderstood by cis and trans people alike, by straight and queer people alike, by people of all ages, and so on. I struggle to talk about this because I've felt invalidated so many times that I just wonder if it's even worth trying to tell new people because my mind tells me that they just won't get it because other people haven't. At this point in time, I no longer lean towards that label of demisexual. The label just never really felt right. Probably because of all these experiences I've talked about of being emotionally exhausted when trying to explain it and then feeling invalidated. I'm trying to be okay with not having a specific label, just telling people I'm on the asexual spectrum. Maybe gray asexual if it's better. I don't know. Those terms feel broader and less restrictive, so at this point in time, they feel like they fit me better. Maybe that won't be the case a year from now, because I'm still exploring, but I'm trying to tell myself that that's okay for me and that's okay for all of you out there. What I can say is this. This actually felt quite healing and helpful to share this, to write this, to record this, to share this. I'll probably make other videos in the future as my exploration continues, but this is where I'm at now. And on that note, I do find myself wondering, Does any of this resonate with you? Have any of you struggled to explain any aspects of your sexuality to others, or just struggled to explain any aspects of your identity to others? Do any of you identify in the asexual spectrum? And if you do, what about your experiences prompts you to identify as such? How do you describe this part of your identity to others, and how do other people typically react? Let me know all of this and more down in the comments below. And as always, Tipsy and I love you all and hope you're staying safe and sound. If you have not done so already, please be sure to give this a huge thumbs up and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. I love you all. Bye for now.